One of these towns started the war that ended Moorish Spain. One was repopulated with pardoned murderers on purpose. And another hid its mayor inside a wall for 30 years. Andalucía sells its white villages as a single product. One route, one aesthetic. The paint is identical, but nothing else is. And there are more of them than you'd think. The official route from Cádiz has 19. Though asked twice, and you'll get 2 different lists of which 19. So far, I've visited 9 of them. So 9 is what this video is going to cover, ranked from my worst to my best. The ones I've missed can keep their scores for another day. Mijas is on every white village list ever written. Not because it's the best one, but because it's one a coach can reach from a beach hotel in time for lunch. It's a white village, the way a Wetherspoons is a pub. The paint is right, the fittings are right, but none of it survives contact with the gift shops.
Apparently this place is famous for its donkey rides. It's like controversial because you're making these animals walk up and down the hill in the heat.
This is the Costa del Sol in costume. Coach park, bodo taxis, ceramics and other gifts from factories nowhere near this town. Spain's civil war ended in 1939, with Franco's side winning and settling scores. And that year, the last Republican mayor of this town, Manuel Cortés, came home, walked into his own house at night, and didn't come out for 30 years. His family bricked him into a hidden space behind a wall while the reprisals worked through the village. He heard the amnesty announced on the radio in 1969 and stepped outside, aged 63, into a town that had become this. This is probably the best story on the whole route. As a destination, you'd be driving past 4 better towns to reach it though, and the donkeys would leave if they could. Medina Sidonia has been on this hill for roughly 3,000 years. The Phoenicians gave it the name, and some people call it the oldest city in Europe, a title contested by approximately everywhere. Either way, it's really old, and completely unbothered about whether you visit or not. This town supplied the commander of the Spanish Armada, but he didn't want the job. The Duke of Medina Sidonia wrote to the king, saying that he had no naval experience and got seasick. The king made him do it anyway, and it didn't work out too well. Honestly, this is worth a half day. It's best bolted onto Vejer, which is just 25 minutes away. Okay, this is where my list is going to get a bit contrary. Bornos. There's no cliff, no gorge, no famous street. The town's pretty flat, sits beside a reservoir, and most itineraries will drive straight past it. And I'm ranking it above Mijas without hesitation. Bornos is the worst holiday and the best Tuesday in this video. There's nothing to see in the brochure sense. The lake, a Renaissance palace with a garden nobody queues for, streets built for living in rather than looking at. You won't come here on holiday, but if you're browsing through property listings at 2 in the morning, Bornos is worth a look. This is Arcos de la Frontera, the official gateway, and the first white town after leaving Jerez. It's the one that teaches you the format. Cliff, white massive houses on top, and a church parked at the edge of the drop. Arcos took its frontier name seriously. Its duke was the one who captured Zahara from Granada in 1407. The town is genuinely worth seeing. Balconies hanging over a sheer fall, and streets so narrow a Fiat 500 has to breathe in. So why am I only putting this in 6th? Because Arcos does everything that the top 5 do, just one notch less. The view is almost Ronda. The quiet is almost Zahara. The maze is almost Vejer. Come here first. Just don't only come here. These have got to be the most photographed bits of rock in Andalucía.
So this is Setenil de las Bodegas.
Houses under the overhang, bars in the shade of it, one street on the sunny side and one in the shadow.
Oh, its name comes from like Latin, and it means 7 for nothing, apparently. Because during the time of the Reconquista, the Catholic kings tried to conquer this town 7 times and failed.
A town so stubborn that its name is a scoreboard.
The de las Bodegas came later, when the Christians who were then ruling in this area planted loads of vineyards around, but they were all wiped out in the 1860s, I think, by some insect plague. So over millions of years, this little stream, this little river, has carved out this really deep gorge valley with these massive rock cliffs. And rather than building into the cliffs, they use the natural overhang of the rock for shade and shelter, using the back of the cliff as the back wall, and built into the side of them.
My advice here, spend about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Walk around, grab a drink under several thousand tons of geology. It is pretty memorable, and you'll be done, roughly, when the coaches from Ronda arrive. 5th place isn't an insult, it's a portion size. Quick intermission to answer the question, why is everything here white? It's a lime wash. Originally, it was cheap, mildly antiseptic, and they repainted against heat and disease. Then somewhere along the way the habit became the brand, and the brand became what? This is real. Spanish towns write facade colour into municipal ordinance. The Instagram shot here is legally protected. Olvera has, and I'll argue about this, the best skyline on this whole route. A Moorish castle and a giant church sharing the same blade of rock, surrounded by olive groves in every direction. When Castile took Olvera in the 1300s, nobody wanted to live on a war frontier. So the Crown's charter offered criminals a pardon if they stayed here for a year and a day. The regional saying survives: Mata al hombre y vete a la Olvera. Kill the man and get yourself to Olvera. The prettiest skyline in the Cádiz province was populated by legal amnesty for murderers. The trail below the town is the Via Verde de la Sierra, a railway from Jerez into the hills. Not one train ever ran. Spain built a complete railway, changed its mind, and 80 years later, it's like the best bike ride here in Andalucía. Why number 4 and not 1? The town under the skyline is just a normal working town. You'll be done looking before you're done admiring. Stay the night anyway. It's the cheapest good view in the south. Ronda. And no, it isn't first. It'll probably be first on every other list you'll find though, just not this one. Let's talk about this bridge, because the bridge really earns this town's place here. Attempt number 1 was a single arch thrown up quickly, and it stood for 6 years. Then it fell into the gorge, taking 50 people with it. So attempt 2 went the other way. 34 years of construction, stone quarried out of the gorge itself. And a result that isn't so much a bridge as a fortified apology. 3 stacked arches, a chamber in the middle that later did time as a prison. It's been on every guidebook cover since. The town's favourite story is that the architect fell to his death inspecting his masterpiece. Although it's sadly false. He died in bed in Malaga years later. Abbas Firnas was born here in the 9th century. He was the first person in recorded history to attempt flight. He built himself wings of silk and feathers and jumped from a hillside near Cordoba somewhere in his 60s and glided long enough for it to count before coming down hard. Because, as the story goes, he'd studied how birds take off, but never how they land. The reason Ronda's not higher is by noon, the centre belongs to day trippers. It is the best, famous town in the south. The 2 above it are lesser known. Zahara de la Sierra announces itself from 10 minutes away. A castle tower on a fang of a rock, a white town poured down one side of it, and a turquoise lake at the bottom. This is where the end began. In 1481, Granada's soldiers climbed this rock and took the castle, which turned out to be the worst decision in the kingdom's history, because Castile had spent years waiting for exactly this excuse. 11 years of war later, Granada was gone. The monarchs were in a spectacular mood, and a persistent Italian finally got funding for his boat idea. This rock is 3 dominoes from the discovery of the Americas. This turquoise lake here is actually younger than I am. A dam flooded the valley in 1992, and Zahara got a Mediterranean postcard as compensation. Manufactured? Yeah, completely, but it works anyway. One thing you'll notice here is that even in high season, the streets are quiet by early evening. Zahara is what Ronda would be, with 95% fewer people. If your trip has room for exactly one hill town with a castle, make it this one. And my winner isn't in the mountains at all. Vejer de la Frontera sits on a lone hill near the Atlantic, 8 kilometres from a proper beach. White in a way that's less fortress and more labyrinth. patios, archways, a walled old town you navigate by getting lost on purpose. Down in the lagoon country below, in 1711, the Visigoths lost one battle so comprehensively that Spain spent the next 7 centuries as Al-Andalus. The whole story you've been driving through started within sight of this hill and ended at Zahara. It's an absolutely stunning town. It's another one on the list of the most beautiful towns in Spain. Vejer's icon is a woman in black, covered head to toe, one eye showing. It looks like the last ghost of Moorish Spain, and the town is delighted for you to think so. But it's actually Castilian fashion from the 1600s that hung on here because Vejer was too poor and too isolated to buy new clothes. Then it got banned, then unbanned, and now it comes out for the fiestas. Because nothing in Andalucía survives like something the authorities once tried to stop. It really is a bit of a maze, but everywhere you walk is absolutely stunning. A beautiful town. So why number 1? Because it has everything the Sierra towns have. The views, the paint, plus the 2 things that they don't. A coastline and a reason to stay past dinner. You'll find restaurants here that are worth the trip just on their own. Real life in the streets after dark, and surf just down the road. The catch though is real. Vejer knows what it's got. Boutique hotels are colonising the hilltop, and outside money is buying the doorways. And in 10 years, this ranking might read differently. Right now, it's the best of both Andalucias. The Instagram post on the hill, and the life at the bottom of it. That's why it's my winner.